absolute pleasure to bring up our fourth storyteller of the night, Ruchi Kalra, who's going to be telling a story about a childhood friend. Please welcome Ruchi.
So have you ever wondered if coincidences and what-ifs are part of life's grander plan? So where do I begin? Do I begin that in a country of 1 billion people, Vivek and I just so happened to be born in the same hospital in Rajasthan, India, in this small, tiny town? Or that when I was 4 years old, my parents moved 1,000 miles away and probably never to meet each other again? Or that when I was 9 years old, my parents moved yet again to a town in Zambia, Africa. And coincidence would have it, his parents were the first ones to come visit us at our guest house, as they had just moved there a few months before us. Or maybe I should start at the weekend parties we would bump into as teenagers. And we were going through the stages of the braces and the big, thick glasses and the awkward dance moves and the baby fat. Well, actually, that was all me. But Vivek did have the baby fat part covered really well. That was all him. Or maybe I should start at the summer of '88, when Vivek and I were home that summer from our colleges in the US. He was from Iowa and I was in Kentucky. I was 17, he was 16. And yes, I know that sounds like really young to start college, but that's a whole another story. So I hadn't seen Vivek in a few years, as he had gone to a college, he had gone to high school in England, just like a few of our other friends. So during that summer, a bunch of us friends rekindled our childhood friendships, and we would spend afternoons going out for ice creams and playing board games. And we would have makeshift dance parties in our living rooms. And somewhere along the way, I had started to develop this little crush. Now, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was his crazy dance moves of sliding across the dance floor on songs I'd never heard, like Ule Ule, or his love for bands like The Police. There was just something really mysterious about this guy. Or maybe I was just in love with his British accent. Now, as that summer was coming to an end, a few of us friends that were going to go back to the US decided we would take this 16-hour flight from Lusaka, the capital of Zambia, to New York, and it would stop in Liberia for refueling. And we bought the tickets on the same day. So August 23rd, 1988, as we boarded that Zambia Airways flight, and a few of us friends and Vivek made our way down the aisle, and luck would have it, it was row 23G and H were our seats. Did I mention that we also have birthdays on 23rd February and 23rd December? And so, as we sat down, it was 5 hours of non-stop talking, all the way to Liberia. And we did nothing but just talk about everything we could think of. And as we landed in Liberia, we found out that we had to go back to Ivory Coast, another country in West Africa, to refuel. And that was gonna add 3.5 hours more to our flight. Now, everybody around me looked so upset. Not me. I was very happy. I was gonna get to spend the next 14.5 hours next to the crush of my life, is what it seemed. Somewhere, as we took off from Ivory Coast, and somewhere over the waters of the Atlantic, something was bubbling inside of me. I needed to tell him. I needed to tell him I had this crush on him the whole summer. I didn't even want him to say it back. I don't even know why. I just needed him to know. So I mustered up my courage, I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, I have something to tell you. And he said, sure. I said, "I really like you." He looked puzzled and surprised, leaned into me, and then he said, "In what way?" Now, it was my turn to be puzzled and surprised, as I had no idea what that meant. Like, did he even hear me? So I decided to repeat myself. And I said, "No, I mean, I really like you." This time, he smiled, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Oh my God, I really like you too." Yes, I know, really bad British accent, but that was my attempt at trying it. So that is what Indian aunties worldwide, not the village auntie, but the Indian aunties worldwide, would call a love affair and the start of a lot of gossip. So yes, that was the start of my very own Bollywood long-distance love affair, with lots of late-night phone calls and lots of letter writing, like the real ones where we put in the mailbox. And also a few trips to fly back and forth to see each other between Iowa and Kentucky. Now this whole time, my parents in Africa had no idea I was doing this. In fact, they hadn't sent me to the US to be distracted by boys and this thing called love. They'd send me to America to study, to make something of my life. In fact, my biggest fear was something was gonna happen to me over the skies of Chicago, and they would wonder what I was even doing there and why I wasn't at a library on a Friday night studying. Because that's what I did every Friday night. And this is probably the first time they're hearing this, but both Vivek and I had on-campus jobs to pay for our added expenses. Sorry, Mom. And this went on for a couple of years, and we had our on again and off again moments, mostly on, but through the whole thing, we remained the best of friends and would continue talking each and every single day. Now, as I was 19 years old, about to graduate from college, my mom called and she said, "Ruchi, is there someone that you like? Because if there is, tell us so we can get you married." Now, you were probably thinking that I would be surprised they wanted me to get married at 19. No. I was surprised that they thought that I could like someone in college. I thought I couldn't like anyone until I married them. But Mom was asking, so I thought, well, let me tell her. So I told them about Vivek. I knew I didn't want to get married, but I said, let me tell them about Vivek and we'll talk about it in a couple of years. Well, they were not happy, to put it mildly. Not because they didn't like him, but because he wasn't marriage material. Now, what was marriage material? It was a guy who was in his late 20s, someone who was a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, someone who was tall, maybe 5'11", 5'10", someone who could take good care of me and give me a good life. So my 18-year-old, still in college, living off his parents, 5'7", on a really good day, was not cutting it. Now I knew I didn't want to get married at 19, but I also knew I could never, ever go against my parents or their wishes or hurt their feelings. So I listened to them and I moved here to Arizona to live with my brother, and I started meeting these guys who were marriage material. And in fact, I met some amazing guys. The first guy that I met, I was nearly engaged to. We even spoke on the phone for 6 months. My wedding shopping had all been done by my aunt in India and sent here to the US. All we were waiting for was a date to get married. But as chance would have it, things didn't work out. And I continued to meet guys. In that time frame, Vivek moved to Arizona. And every time I met someone, I would call a few of my friends and Vivek to find out what they thought about this guy. And Vivek really, really wanted the best for me. He was hoping I would find the guy, the happiness that I deserved. As much so that after meeting one of the guys in downtown Tempe at Coffee Plantation, he called me that night and he said, Ruchi, if we are gonna make this work, then this is the guy for you. He seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's got a great job. He's tall. But most of all, he's got a great sense of humor. And I think this is the guy for you. So I listened to him. I flew up to Cali to see this guy again. And everything was good. I saw him for a few days. And as I came back to Arizona, and I sat on that phone call with my mom, and all she wanted to hear was the word yes. I couldn't. I had tried really hard. It had been 4 years. I had met over 40 guys. I had a big, thick folder. And I would take notes on each one of them so I could keep them straight. I really tried, and I couldn't get the words out. And I knew if I just said that word, everything would get rolling into motion, and I would be married to a stranger in just a matter of months. My mom sensed my agony through my quietness and stillness. And she said, Ruchi, let's take a break. No more guy talk, no more marriage talk, and we will talk about this in a year. That 23rd year of mine flew by really fast. And as I was about to ring in my 24th birthday, my brother and my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, called. And my brother said, Ruchi, Mom and Dad said yes. I said, yes to what? And he said, yes to you and Vivek. I said, yes to me and Vivek what? He said, to you and Vivek getting married. I said, to each other? And he said, yes, happy birthday. And then he continued on to tell me that him and my sister-in-law had written a 10-page fax to my parents in one last-ditch attempt to convince them. And in that they had said, yes, he is 22 years old. Yes, he's still in college doing his master's. And yes, he has no job. But he has potential. And most importantly, he would love her and take care of her like no other. Now, something between those lines melted my parents' heart. Or maybe I was just 24 years old and I was not marriage material anymore. But they agreed. Their only condition was we had to wait a year till he finished his master's, and we had to make sure no Indian aunties knew, just in case something went wrong again. So a year later, I not only married my best friend, I married someone I could have never imagined myself being married to. And all thanks to my brother and my sister-in-law. And with the blessings, and most of all, permission from my parents. Now as a parent of a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old, I know that my parents wanted the best for me. In fact, one of the most touching things that my father said to me a few years ago before he passed was accepting Vivek was one of the best things your mother and I could have ever done in life. And as Vivek and I are about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary this year, I do believe that the universe had a grander plan for us. And all those coincidences and what ifs could have had very different outcomes. But all of those led me here to this very moment to tell you my story, to be with my best friend, my soulmate, my love of my life, and my very own Bollywood hero. Thank you.